Mordi,
Arjun,
brother, thank you so much for being here today.
such a freaking pleasure.
Whole point of these chats is that basically whoever watches them maybe learn something that's new. And this is a beautiful place we're actually doing it. We're on a hike together
Loving
in the
it.
Dandelion Ranges.
There's nothing like being in nature.
It's a beautiful hike. So maybe we can first start off by kind of talking about how you and I met each other.
Sure, I go back to that memory quite often.
Really?
We went to a meetup.
Yeah.
It was based on the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Beautiful book.
And they were speaking about negotiation. And
Yeah.
both of us were quite into it.
Yeah.
And afterwards, you came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm Arjun." We started to schmooze. You got my LinkedIn.
Yeah.
First time ever that someone's asked me if I LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But there's a first for everything.
Yeah.
And since then, our friendship has blossomed.
Yes, brother, it has flourished. Where did you grow up? You didn't grow up in Melbourne.
I did not grow up in Melbourne. I actually grew up in Sydney till the age of 19.
Okay. Till 19.
Till 19, and then went to study overseas in school to be a rabbi. So from Montreal to Venezuela to South Africa, and eventually back home to Sydney, and then lived overseas many more years after that.
You're very well traveled.
Thank you,
and
sir.
And also, you are quite a talented gentleman,
Oh,
right? You speak a couple languages.
I do indeed. Spanish, Hebrew, English, of course, and a smattering of Yiddish.
Yeah, so this is a very smart gentleman we're talking with. And not easy languages, Hebrew, right?
No, not at all.
What is the origin of Hebrew?
That is a great question. The origin of Hebrew is, of course, it is the language of the Bible, the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what the Israelites spoke. This was their language, starting with Abraham, going through all of his children.
Okay, that's fascinating. And Hebrew is spoken in...
Modern days, it's spoken in Israel.
Okay, and you are actually the first person I'm friends with, or I got to know, who is of the Jewish faith. I know nothing about Judaism, if I'm being honest. My understanding is there's different sectors. Is there different sects of Judaism?
No, everyone's a Jew. Whoever's born to a Jewish mother or who goes through the conversion process is a Jew.
Okay, and there's one thing I want to ask. This is a very straight up question.
Go for it.
In your clothing, you guys wear a small cap.
Yes.
What is this called?
So there's 2 names for it. One is called either a kippah or a yarmulke.
Okay, and what's the significance behind wearing it?
There's so much significance behind it. A very basic significance is that God is above, and this is a reminder. And if you get to more Kabbalistic levels, there's a certain level of God, which is the feet of the Holy Presence on someone's head. And this is just right there.
Okay. And you were talking about kind of going and studying to be a rabbi or a rabbi mentorship. What is this?
So what is it? Is that in Judaism we have rabbis who people go to ask them what is the Jewish law, what it says in the text when it comes to marriage, divorce, and birth. And there are schools all around the world that one can be trained and ordained to be a rabbi.
What does the studying of this entail?
Oh my gosh. Studying...
So I feel like I'm asking very basic questions. I really know nothing about Judaism.
Arjun, you got to start from the bottom.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad. Whenever someone comes up to me, and whether it's it, which is the strings coming out of my pants.
Yeah, please do also talk about this.
Sure, we will. They always say, "I'm so sorry for I don't mean to offend you or bother you." Like, bro, I'm so glad that you are asking questions. In fact, Judaism encourages questions. Curiosity.
Okay.
So back to the rabbi school. What it entails, starting at 7:30 in the morning, ending at 9:30 at night, Sunday to Friday, and studying all the texts, whether it's the Talmud, whether it's the laws of kosher, going back in even studying Aramaic as the text is written. And that for me was about a 4-year process till it culminated at the end, where you're tested on everything that you studied. You're tested on the text, the oral law, the written law. You have to be quite fluent in it all.
How are you tested?
You're tested by a big rabbi, and you and your study partner go in, and it's just either it's a written test and an oral test, and he decides whether you pass or not.
So it's a grading system?
Is it a grading system? Yeah, you've got to get a certain... If he feels and he's comfortable that you know the law well, he will pass you.
Okay. And you were talking about a study partner. My understanding is in your faith, there's a lot of studying with someone or reciting with someone. What's the significance of this?
Sure. So the Hebrew name for this is called chavrutah, which the root of chavrutah is chaver.
Yeah.
In Hebrew means a friend.
Yeah.
And a lot of the study is not where you've got one teacher in the front and rows of pupils. Rather, and this is going back for centuries, you would have, a rabbi who you could ask any questions to, but the room was full of pairs of people studying together, and you would figure it out together. You would argue over the meaning of the text, and this give and take has been in our tradition almost forever. And a lot of it is self-learning. You learn how to learn, and it's an iterative process, and that's the main way that I studied the Hebrew text.
That's quite fascinating. And the test is in Hebrew as well?
The test is, the questions are asked in English, but all of the text which you're studying from is in Hebrew.
And you were talking about the strings.
Yes, the strings.
Maybe you could talk about this.
Sure.
What it,
So we can show it a bit.
yeah.
So here's the shirt, as you can see. And underneath it is a four-cornered garment, which in Hebrew is called tzitzit. And on every corner, there are strings. And these strings have a significance. And the idea behind them is that they are supposed to remind you of all of the commandments. There are 613 commandments in, yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. And the very basic is when you're trying to remember something, you tie a string around your finger so you don't forget. But there is a deeper meaning of the word tzitzit in Hebrew. The numerical value is 600. Each corner has 8 strings, 608. And then there are 5 knots, 613. So whenever you are, all 4 directions, because it's got 4 corners, you are reminded as a Jew to adhere to the commandments.
That is pretty fascinating stuff.
Sure.
And this is part of your sleeping attire as well, or?
So no, not part of my sleeping attire, but when I'm awake, I wear my tzitzit.
Okay.
Wherever I am, I don't tuck it in. It's always out for display as a proud Jew wherever I am.
That is very, very fascinating. And I think on that line, you were also talking about something called kosher.
Yes.
When we've been to supermarkets, I noticed that there's a section for meats and even products, kosher. What is this and what is the importance behind this?
Good question, Arjun. You are what you eat.
Yeah.
And a big part of the laws of the Torah, of the Bible, is the laws of kosher, the dietary laws. And it's broken up into a couple pieces. Number one is what is a kosher product. So you've got anything which grows from the ground, herbs, spices, fruits, vegetables, all of those are kosher. When it comes to fish, a fish has to have fins and scales, and it's kosher. So tuna, for example, is kosher. Salmon is kosher. Octopus is not kosher. Shark is not kosher.
Oh, this is not allowed.
Not allowed.
Squid.
Squid also not allowed.
Calamari. All that
Calamari
stuff.
also not allowed.
Shrimp as well, that means.
Shrimp as well.
Crustaceans basically are not allowed.
Yeah. Sharks, none of those stuff.
A lobster, all this fancy
Lobster
stuff.
also, no fancy stuff.
Wow. Okay.
So that's fish. Then when it comes to meat products, it has to be of a kosher animal.
Okay.
And what makes an animal kosher is it has to have split hooves. So the hoof is at the bottom. There's a split on the bottom. And you will see that, for example, on cows have split hooves. Sheep have split hooves. The next time you see a sheep, look at its feet. But for example, the horse is not split. It's a whole imagine like a horseshoe. And it has to chew its cud. It's a ruminator, so it's got several stomachs inside of it and regurgitates the food, etc. That makes the animal kosher. So a cow, for example, has several stomachs inside, so does a sheep.
Okay. And what about the way in which the animal is sacrificed?
That is such a good question, Arjun. The way the animal is sacrificed or slaughtered in the kosher way, which I actually studied whilst living in Venezuela, was that you've got a knife and it's sharpened by hand, and with that knife you cut the throat of the animal, cutting the windpipe and the food pipe, and that is what makes the animal kosher.
And you let it bleed.
You let it bleed, you salt it out, take all the blood.
What does salted out mean?
So you lay the meat in salt to suck out all of the blood. You also check the intestines to see that it's a healthy animal. And then once that's all done, that is a kosher animal to eat.
And you recite a prayer while doing this?
Correct. So you recite a prayer when you kill the animal. You also recite a prayer when you're eating the food. And the last one is not mixing milk and meat together. So we don't have any cheeseburgers, none of those stuff.
Why?
That's the way. It says in the Torah, in the Bible, you shouldn't cook a kid in its mother's milk. And since then, we don't mix milk and meat together.
Oh, so that would even apply for like cow cheese and like chicken?
Everything.
Because the chicken is not an animal, but even then it's
Everything.
basically meat.
Yeah.
So that even includes preparation for food.
Yeah, so we've got separate utensils.
Separate utensils as well?
Yeah, separate washing machines. It goes all out.
Oh, this is very, very
It
strict.
is.
So what one other thing would you like to share with someone who's watching this about Judaism, something that's really fascinating that you think would be an interesting thing to learn?
Good question. I think the last thing that you touched upon was the blessings that we make.
Yes, yes.
So the blessings that we make for food.
Yes.
Before you eat food, you make a blessing. For me, the blessing is, of course, thanking God for what I have, but is setting an intention for my life. I'm not just eating to live another day. There's a purpose why I'm here in this world.
Which is?
That's a good question. Still figuring that out.
No, I think we all are.
We all are. But a big part I know, the overarching, is that we have to leave this world a better place than we found it.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And adding on to that, I actually asked, I'm going for Buddhist lessons and I made a video about this. How can I contribute to society? So I asked my Buddhist teacher this, and he said, don't worry about contributing. Stay away from killing, harming, stealing, all this bad stuff, and you're contributing in a way. You're contributing to not being a menace to society.
Sure.
If everyone was just staying away from doing harmful things, the society would actually be flourishing.
Absolutely.
And there's one more thing I was hoping to ask you on, and that is that one thing I learned about you is you're very, very well traveled. What is a crazy travel story you have? Like, what's the most fascinating place you've been to, and what's a crazy travel story associated with that?
Oh my gosh, there's way too much to count. Where do I start? I don't know, some of my travels.
Yeah. Yeah, so any place and a crazy travel story.
I don't know, some places when I go to bed that night and I look back, and when I say to myself, Mordi, when you woke up this morning to where you end up tonight, you would have never dreamt that this is how your day turned out.
Yeah. I think you're a gentleman that just lives life for the day, and you're like, I have a small amount of time on this planet, let's just go explore. And
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's really being open to experiences. When I travel, I really try not to be on my phone, never have AirPods or earphones in my
present.
ears, super present, and just trying as much to interact with the local people, being like, hey, I'm Mordi from Australia. I'm the best thing since sliced bread. Do you want to get to know me? And I'm trying to think okay, so the most recent place I traveled to was Romania, and I spent 6 weeks there. half with friends, half by myself, solo travel. And once I was in the city of Cluj-Napoca, and I ended up going for a jog,
Yes.
bumping into a fellow.
Yeah.
He invites me to go on a hike to see a waterfall. We go with him and a friend of his. This person proceeds to take us to visit her grandmother, who lives in some village out of Cluj, and then invites us to go visit a friend of hers in another village.
Oh my gosh.
No phone service, rolling green hills, no post,
Yeah.
nada, running water, electricity, just a village in the middle of nowhere, pristine nature. We end up staying there the night because they wouldn't let us leave. They were so hospitable. And yeah, when I woke up the next morning, and even when I went to bed that night, I thought, Mordi, what is happening? You've just been open to what can happen on travel, and you create the most incredible stories.
And this comes from you literally just saying yes to one thing, and that's a domino effect where you say yes to another thing, and it just opens up windows of opportunities, right? To see different places, experience different things.
100%.
So I guess it all comes from just being receptive to trying new things.
Yes.
So Romania is a good country.
Oh, it's a fantastic country.
Yeah, and you'd say that's an experience that really stood out to you, a
Yeah.
crazy experience.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't exchange for the world.
Nada.
Amazing. You're a very fascinating person, Mordi, and I can tell that you probably read How to Win Friends and Influence. Yeah. And normally we have a closing tradition on this chat, and it's if you could give a piece of advice to anyone who's watching,
Yeah.
any relevant piece of advice, what would it be?
That's a really good question. A piece of relevant advice that I would give to people. Be fearless.
Be fearless.
Yeah. Because there are way too many talented people that the only thing that's holding them back is their self-doubt and their fear.
Wow,
And life is way too short for that.
100%. Beautiful words signing off. Thank you so much for being a part of this little project.
An absolute pleasure.
And I'll see you around, and by that we'll finish the rest of our hike.
Yes.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.